The scream ripped through the private hospital wing like a gunshot. It wasn't the sharp cry of a man startled awake. It was raw, animal, torn straight from the chest. Lorenzo De Luca arched violently in the bed, fingers clawing at the sheet, breath coming in broken gasps, as if his lungs had forgotten how to work. Sweat drenched his dark hair, his jaw locked, teeth grinding so hard the sound made the nurse flinch. "Get it off," he choked. "Jesus, get it off me." Monitors spiked. Alarms began their cold, relentless beeping. The nurse rushed to his side, instinct overriding fear, even though everyone in the city knew that name. De Luca, son of the man who owned half the docks, the police chief's silence, and the graves under the river. She pressed her hand to his shoulder, felt muscle jump beneath her palm like something trying to escape skin. "Lorenzo, look at me," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "You're safe. You were in the hospital." His eyes flew open, dark, unfocused, terrified. "It's stabbing me," he whispered hoarsely. "My back, my neck, it won't stop." She pulled back the sheets. No wounds, no blood. Just skin flushed red with stress and fever. The pain didn't make sense, and that scared her more than if it had. Another scream tore out of him as he collapsed sideways. The nurse reached behind his shoulders to adjust the pillow. Her fingers brushed something hard, sharp. She froze. Slowly, carefully, she lifted the pillow. It sagged oddly in the middle, heavier than it should have been. A chill crept up her spine. She grabbed a pair of scissors from the tray, heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. One clean slice. The pillow split open. Needles spilled out, dozens of them. Thin, surgical-grade needles, sewn into the lining like teeth. Some bent, some stained faintly pink. For half a second, the room went silent except for the monitors. "Oh my God," she breathed. Lorenzo stared at them, chest heaving. Understanding dawned slowly, horribly. Someone had done this on purpose. 3 floors below, Matteo De Luca stood in front of the window, hands clasped, behind his back, watching the city lights flicker like nervous stars. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Not since the call. "Your son is screaming in pain. We don't know why." Matteo had buried men for less uncertainty than that. The hospital corridor behind him buzzed with quiet panic. Doctors whispered. Guards shifted their weight. No one met his eyes. They never did when things went wrong. When the door opened, he turned. The nurse stood there pale, holding a clear evidence bag filled with needles. They were inside his pillow, she said. Her voice shook despite her effort. "Sewn in." Someone replaced it. For the first time in years, Matteo De Luca felt the ground tilt beneath him. Who had access? He asked softly. She swallowed. "Staff. Security. Family." Matteo nodded once. His face didn't change, but something dark and lethal moved behind his eyes. "Thank you," he said. She hesitated. "Sir, your son kept calling out a name. Before the pain got worse." Matteo's fingers tightened. "What name?" "Anna." The word hit him harder than the needles ever could. Anna Russo stood in a cramped apartment across town, rocking her 5-year-old son as he slept against her chest. His breathing was soft and uneven, his small hand tangled in her sweater like an anchor. She stared at the wall, listening to the hum of the old refrigerator, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years, not since the night she walked away from Matteo De Luca with nothing but a suitcase and a truth she never told. Her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again. And again, her stomach twisted. Somewhere, far across the city, Lorenzo De Luca screamed once more as doctor sedated him, the needles lying on a steel tray like a silent accusation. And as Anna finally reached for her phone, a terrible certainty settled in her bones. The past ones finished with any of them. Anna answered the phone without saying her name. For a moment, there was only breathing on the other end. Slow, controlled male. It carried the weight of money and violence even before he spoke. "Anna Russo," the voice said quietly. "You haven't changed your number." Her grip tightened around the phone. She moved carefully, easing her son off her chest and onto the couch, tucking a blanket under his chin, only when she was sure he would. tea wake did she step into the kitchen, pressing her back to the counter like it could hold her upright. "I don't know who you think you calling," she said, keeping her voice low, steady. "But you have the wrong person." A faint pause. Not confusion, amusement. "You always lied badly when you were scared," Matteo De Luca replied. The world narrowed to that name. She closed her eyes. For years, she detrained herself not to react, to treat memories of him like old scars that didn't ache anymore. But hearing his voice was like pressing a thumb into something that had never healed. "You shouldn't be calling me," she said. "Not now, not ever." "My son is in the hospital," he said. No anger, no plea. Just a statement, heavy as stone. Someone tried to hurt him. Her breath caught despite herself. Images flickered uninvited Lorenzo as a boy, sulking in doorways, too proud to ask for comfort. The way he used to watch her when he thought no one noticed. "That's not my problem," she said, though her voice wavered. "He was screaming your name." Silence flooded the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Her heart pounded so hard she felt dizzy. "That is impossible," she whispered. "I don't believe in coincidence," Matteo said. "And neither do you." She hung up. Her hands shook as she set the phone down. She leaned over the sink, breathing through the tightness in her chest, trying to slow the rush of thoughts. She had buried that life, buried him. She had done everything right, moved neighborhoods, worked 2 jobs, kept her head down, protected her son. She glanced toward the couch. Nico slept on, lashes dark against his cheeks, unaware that the world his mother had been shielding him from was already reaching through the cracks. At dawn, Matteo stood beside Lorenzo's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his son's chest. Sedation had dulled the pain, but it hadn't erased the fear etched into his face. Lorenzo looked younger like this, vulnerable in a way Matteo had never allowed himself to be. The needles sat sealed in plastic on the table. Matteo picked up the bag, studying the stitching. Precise, patient, someone with time and access, someone who wanted pain, not death. "Boss," one of his men murmured from the doorway. "We've narrowed it down. Only 3 people handled that room overnight." Matteo didn't look up. "Find out who hates me enough to torture my son instead of killing him." The man hesitated. "There's something else." That got his attention. "What?" "Hospital records." The nurse mentioned the name Anna. "We pulled old files. She worked here years ago, maternity ward." "Left suddenly." Matteo's jaw tightened. "She didn't leave," he said. "I pushed her." The man shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, there's no record of a child associated with her." Matteo's gaze snapped to him. "What?" "No birth certificate linked to her name in this city after she disappeared." Something cold slid into Matteo's chest. "Run it again," he said. "Expand the search." When the man left, Matteo sat heavily in the chair beside the bed. He looked at Lorenzo, at the familiar line of his nose, the stubborn set of his mouth, and for the first time he let himself think the thought he had refused for years. What if Anna hadn't left alone? Anna didn't go to work that morning. She told her boss Nico was sick. It wasn't a lie. Not really. The boy had woken with a fever and clung to her leg, eyes glassy. She kept him home, pressed cool cloths to his forehead, watched cartoons on mute, while her mind replayed Matteo's voice over and over. By noon, her phone buzzed again. She didn't answer. An hour later, there was a knock at the door, not loud, not threatening, controlled. Her stomach dropped. She peered through the peephole. A woman stood there. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back, a nurse's badge clipped to her jacket. "Anna Russo?" The woman asked gently when the door cracked open. "Yes. My name is Sophia. I work at St. Vincent's." She hesitated, eyes softening. "I think you should come with me." Anna's heart began to race. "Why?" "Because," Sophia said quietly, "someone hurt a man you once loved. And I don't think it's finished." From the couch, Nico stirred and called softly, "Mama." Anna closed her eyes, already knowing this was the moment she'd been running from, and somewhere in a private hospital room, Lorenzo De Luca opened his eyes and whispered her name again, this time not in pain, but in fear. Anna didn't pack a bag. She didn't call anyone. She just pulled a sweater over Nico's head, slipped his sneakers on without socks, and locked the apartment door behind them as if she were stepping out for groceries instead of into a past that had teeth. The drive across town felt unreal. Sophia drove in silence, hands steady on the wheel, eyes forward. Nico sat in the back seat, feverish and quiet, his head leaning against the window. Anna watched the city slide by and felt every year she'd spent hiding peel away, layer by layer. "Why are you helping him?" Anna asked finally. Sophia didn't look at her. "I'm helping the truth," she said, "and your son deserves not to be collateral damage." Anna's throat tightened. She turned to the window before Sophia could see her eyes fill. The hospital rose out of the gray morning like a fortress, private entrance, armed guards. The kind of place where pain wore tailored suits and spoke softly. As soon as Anna stepped inside, she felt that familiar pressure, like the air. Itself expected obedience. Conversations dipped. Heads turned. Someone whispered her name. She kept her hand on Nico's shoulder. Sophia led them through back corridors, away from waiting rooms and elevators, until they reached a door guarded by two men in black coats. One of them glanced at Anna, then at the child. His eyes widened slightly. He knocked once and opened the door without waiting. Matteo De Luca stood by the window, exactly as she remembered him. Same posture, same immaculately cut suit. The city lay beneath him like an offering. He turned. For a moment no one spoke. Time folded in on itself. Anna saw him as he'd been young, ruthless, magnetic, and she saw him as he was now, older, harder, with regret etched into the lines around his mouth. Then his gaze dropped. To Nico. The room went very still. Matteo took one step forward, then stopped as if afraid the floor might give way. "How old?" he asked hoarsely. Anna's chest burned. 5. His breath left him in a slow, broken exhale. Lorenzo stirred in the bed. "Papa," he murmured, eyes fluttering open. He frowned, confused, and noticed Anna standing there. His eyes widened. "You came," he whispered. "I thought I imagined you." Anna moved to his side before she could stop herself. The sight of him pale, exhausted, stripped of arrogance undid something in her. "Someone hurt you," she said softly. His jaw tightened. "They wanted me to feel it." Matteo watched the exchange like a man witnessing a life he should have lived. His gaze kept returning to Nico, who stood quietly by the door, watching Lorenzo with solemn curiosity. "That's my son," Matteo said. "It wants to a question." Anna straightened. "No," she said. "That's mine." The word hung between them, sharp and necessary. Matteo nodded once, absorbing the blow. "I know what I took from you," he said quietly. "I won take him." Nico tugged on Anna's sleeve. "Mama," he whispered. "Why is that man sad?" The question cracked something open. Matteo crouched, slowly bringing himself to Nico's level. He did reach out. He did smile. "I made mistakes," he said simply. "Big ones." Nico studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded as if that explanation made sense. "Okay," he said. It almost broke Matteo. That afternoon the truth began to surface. The needles hadn't been meant for Lorenzo alone. They were a message an old rival, someone Matteo had sidelined years ago without finishing the job, someone who knew about Anna, about the child. "They were testing you," Sophia said quietly as she reviewed the security footage, seeing how far they could go. Matteo's expression turned lethal. They want to get a second chance. Anna listened from the corner, Nico asleep against her shoulder. Every instinct screamed to run to take her son and disappear before the violence followed. But when she looked at Lorenzo, pale and bruised, and at Matteo, standing guard like a man finally awake to what mattered, she hesitated. Lorenzo met her eyes. "They'll come again," he said. "For you, for him." "I can protect my son," Anna said fiercely. Matteo's voice was quiet. "Not alone." Silence fell. Anna felt the weight of choice press down on her. She had built a life on distance and secrecy, but secrets had a way of bleeding through seams. Outside the window, night crept in, and as Matteo placed a hand on the glass, watching the city he ruled with fear, he realized the only thing he truly feared now was losing them all over again. Anna stayed. She told herself it was temporary, that she would leave once Nico's fever broke, once Lorenzo was out of danger, once the threat had a name and a face. She told herself many things, none of them quieted the unease curling in her chest as night settled over the hospital and Matteo. His men took their positions like shadows with pulses. They gave her a private room down the hall, too clean, too quiet. Nico slept in the narrow bed beside hers, his small body curled inward, trusting in a way that hurt to look at. Anna lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting every sound, the soft click of footsteps, the murmur of voices through walls, the distant hum of machines keeping people alive. She hadn't lived like this in years, on edge, listening. A knock came just past midnight. She sat up instantly. "Who is it?" "Me," Matteo said from the other side. "May I come in?" She hesitated, then nodded. The door opened slowly. He didn't cross the room. He stayed near the door, hands visible, posture careful, like a man approaching a skittish animal. The power he carried so effortlessly during the day seemed muted now, weighed down by something heavier than authority. "I won't keep you long," he said. "I wanted to thank you for coming." "I didn't come for you," Anna replied quietly. "I know." A pause. "That makes it mean more." She crossed her arms, suddenly aware of how small the room felt. "What do you want, Matteo?" His jaw tightened at the use of his name. "I want to make this right." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "You don't get to say that like it's a business deal." "No," he agreed. "I don't." Silence stretched between them. Nico shifted in his sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Matteo's eyes flicked to him, softening before he could stop it. "He looks like you," Anna said. "When you sleep." Matteo swallowed. "I used to imagine that," he admitted. "A child. Yours." "I told myself it was better not to know. Because knowing would have required change," she said. "Yes." The honesty startled her more than any lie would have. "They're closing in on the man who did this to Lorenzo," Matteo continued. "He's reckless. He won't stop unless he's stopped." "And what does that mean for us?" she asked. "For you," he said carefully, "it means protection. Real protection. Not hiding. Not running." She shook her head. "I ran once because of you." "I know," he said. "And I won't ask you to trust me, not yet." He reached into his jacket and placed something on the small table by the door. "A phone. Direct line," he said. "Only me. If you feel unsafe even for a second, you call, day or night." Anna stared at the phone, then back at him. "You think that fixes anything?" "No," he said softly, "but it's a start." He left without another word. Anna lay back down, staring at the ceiling again, the phone heavy with implication even from across the room. Lorenzo woke screaming again before dawn. Anna was there before the nurses. She took his hand as his body jerked against the mattress, his eyes wild with remembered pain. "Hey," she said, steady grounding. "You're here. You're safe." His grip tightened around her fingers like a lifeline. "I felt them," he whispered. "Even after they knocked me out. I thought I was losing my mind." "You weren't," she said. "Someone wanted you to doubt yourself." He breathed slowly, following her rhythm. When his pulse finally settled, he looked at her with something like shame. "I used to think pain was just weakness," he said. "Something you pushed through." She met his gaze. "Pain teaches you where it hurts. That's not weakness." He nodded, absorbing the lesson like a boy half his age. When Matteo arrived, Lorenzo was asleep again. He took one look at Anna seated beside the bed and understood everything that had happened without a word exchanged. "She stayed," Lorenzo murmured without opening his eyes. Matteo said nothing. He didn't need to. By afternoon the name came back. Vittorio Hale. An old associate, a man who had smiled at Matteo's table and sworn loyalty while quietly gathering resentment like kindling. He'd lost territory, lost influence, lost a son in a botched deal he blamed on Matteo's ambition. "He wants you to feel what he felt," Sophia said grimly. "And he knows about Nico," Anna said, her voice flat. "Yes." The word settled over them like a sentence. "We're leaving," Anna said immediately, "today." Matteo turned to her. "Where?" "Anywhere that isn't inside your war. There's no place that isn't." He said gently, "Not anymore." Her hands trembled. You don't get to decide that, no, he agreed, but I get to fight for them. She searched his face for manipulation, for calculation. Found none. Just fear, stripped bare. That scared her more than his power ever had. Outside, rain began to fall, streaking the windows with silver lines, and as Nico pressed his face to the glass, watching the storm roll in, Anna knew the calm she'd built her life on was over, and whatever came next would demand everything she had left. The first shot was never meant to hit anyone. It shattered glass 3 streets away, the crack echoing through the late afternoon like a warning bell. Matteo's men reacted instantly, voices sharp, footsteps urgent, hands moving to places that never stayed empty for long. Anna felt it before she heard it, the sudden shift in the air, the way safety drained out of the room. She scooped Nico up without thinking. "What's happening?" he asked, frightened but trying to be brave. "Just a noise," she said, pressing his head into her shoulder. "I've got you." Matteo was already issuing orders, his voice low and precise. "Lock the floor. No windows. Move now." Lorenzo pushed himself upright in bed, pale but furious. "He's close," he said. "This is him." Anna looked at Matteo. "You said the hospital was secure." "It was," he replied. "That doesn't mean it's untouchable." They moved Anna and Nico to a reinforced room deeper inside the building. No windows. 1 door. 2 guards outside. The walls felt like they were closing in, thick with the knowledge that hiding was no longer an option. Nico sensed it. He clung to her neck, his small fingers digging in. "Mama, I don't like this place." "I know," she whispered. "I know." When the door shut, the silence that followed was worse than the noise. Anna paced the narrow space, rocking Nico gently. Matteo stood near the wall, phone pressed to his ear, listening more than speaking. "This ends tonight," he said finally, and, disconnected, she stopped pacing. "What does that mean?" "It means Vittorio did another move." "And how many people get hurt when you decide that?" she asked sharply. He met her gaze. "As few as possible." "That is not an answer," she said. "That, something you tell yourself so you can sleep." Something flickered across his face, pain maybe. "I don't sleep," he said quietly. Nico lifted his head and looked at Matteo with solemn curiosity. "Are you the reason bad men are angry?" The question landed like a blow. Matteo crouched slowly. "Sometimes," he said honestly. Nico thought about that. "Then maybe you should stop." Anna's breath caught. Matteo did answer right away. When he did, his voice was rough. "I don't know how." Nico studied him, then leaned back into Anna. "Mama knows how to stop things," he said. "She makes them quiet." Anna closed her eyes. The call came just before nightfall. Matteo answered it on speaker, his face unreadable. "You always did hide behind walls." Vittorio Hale. S voice sneered through the phone. "But walls don't keep needles out, do they?" Anna felt her stomach twist. "You wanted my attention," Matteo said. "You have it." "I wanted your pain," Vittorio replied. "But I'll settle for watching you choose." "Choose what?" "Your empire," Vittorio said, "or the woman and the child you never claimed." The silence that followed was suffocating. Anna stepped forward. "You leave my son out of this," she said into the phone, her voice shaking with rage. "He's nothing to you." Vittorio laughed. "He's everything to him." Matteo's hand tightened around the phone. "If you touch them." "I already have," Vittorio interrupted. "Every second you hesitate." The line went dead. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Matteo turned to Anna. "I can move you, now, out of the city." "And Lorenzo?" she asked. "He stays," Lorenzo said from the doorway, leaning heavily on the frame. "I am not running. This is on me too." Anna looked between them, anger and fear warring in her chest. "You don't get to decide this without me." Matteo nodded, then decide. The weight of it pressed down on her. Run again, always looking over her shoulder. Or stay, step fully into the world she'd tried to escape, trusting the man who once broke her heart to protect what mattered most. Nico stirred in her arms, his fever finally breaking. He looked up at her, eyes clearer than they'd been all day. "Are we going home?" he asked. She kissed his forehead. "I don't know yet." She looked at Matteo. "If I stay," she said slowly, "this ends. Not with blood in the streets. Not with more sons screaming in beds." Matteo held her gaze. "I'll do whatever it takes." "That's what scares me," she replied. Outside, the city lights flickered on, one by one, like stars that didn't care who ruled beneath them. And as Matteo De Luca stood between his past and his future, he realized that winning this war might mean losing the only thing he'd ever wanted to save. Night came down hard and fast, swallowing the city in a wet, restless darkness. They moved Anna and Nico just after sunset. Not in a rush, not in a convoy that would draw attention. Matteo insisted on riding in the same car. No driver between them, no glass divider, just the three of them in the back seat. The city sliding past like a held breath. Nico fell asleep almost immediately, his head heavy on Anna's shoulder. The fever was gone now, leaving him drained and pliant. Anna stroked his hair, counting each rise and fall of his chest, grounding herself in the simple fact that he was here, alive, warm. Matteo watched them without trying to hide it. "You should have taken him far away years ago," he said quietly. Anna didn't look at him. "I tried, but no place stays far forever." The car turned into a gated property on the edge of the river. Not a mansion, not a fortress, a low, modern house set back from the road, lights dimmed, presence understated. It surprised her. "This isn't one of your usual places," she said. "No," he replied. "It's where I go when I need to remember who I was before everything hardened." That unsettled her more than marble floors ever had. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and clean wood. No staff, no noise. Just quiet rooms and wide windows facing dark water. Matteo showed her to a bedroom at the back, set Nico gently on the bed, himself adjusting the blanket with hands that trembled just slightly. Anna noticed. When Nico was settled, Matteo stepped back. "You lock this door from the inside. 2 exits, guards outside, but you won't see them. And you?" she asked. "I'll be in the front room," he said. "Awake." She nodded. No thank you, no trust, just acknowledgement. Lorenzo insisted on leaving the hospital before midnight, against orders, against reason, against the remaining pain that flared sharp and sudden when he moved too fast. He ignored all of it. Rage carried him where strength faltered. "He won't stop until he sees me bleed," Lorenzo told Sofia, as she helped him into a coat. "I'm done waiting." She searched his face. "And if he comes for Anna instead?" Lorenzo's jaw clenched. "Then he doesn't leave breathing." Anna couldn't sleep. She lay on the bed beside Nico, staring into the dark, listening to the distant rush of the river. Every sound felt amplified. Every second stretched thin. She slipped out of the room and padded down the hallway. Matteo sat at the kitchen table, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, a glass of untouched whiskey in front of him. Papers were spread across the table, maps, photos, names. A life dismantled into pieces. He looked up when she entered. "You should be resting," he said. "So should you." A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. "I don't deserve rest." She leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Vittorio wants you to choose," she said. "That's what this is really about." "Yes, and you already have," she said softly. He didn't deny it. "I spent my life believing fear was control," he said after a moment. "That if people were afraid enough, nothing could touch what mattered." She waited. "I was wrong," he continued. "Fear just teaches people where to aim." Her throat tightened. "There's a way to end this, without him ever getting near Nico," Matteo said. "But it costs me everything I've built." She met his eyes. "Tell me I disappear," he said simply. "Publicly. My name, my position, my reach. Vittorio doesn't want money, he wants the throne. I let him think he's won." "And then what?" she asked. "And then," he said quietly, "I live small. Or I don't live at all. But you and the boys are free." Anna stared at him, stunned. "You think you get to decide that alone?" "I think it's the only way." She stepped closer, anger flaring. "You don't get redemption by vanishing. You get it by staying and changing." He laughed softly, bitter. "Men like me don't change." She placed a hand flat against his chest. felt the hard, frantic beat beneath. Men like you don't believe they can. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Really looked. Not as something he'd lost. Not as leverage, but as the woman who had survived him. A phone buzzed on the table. Matteo glanced at the screen. Lorenzo, he said and answered. Vittorio's on the move, Lorenzo said. He's heading for the river. Same stretch as your house. Anna's breath caught. Matteo stood. I'll handle it. No, Anna said sharply. You won't. He grabbed his arm. If you go out there alone, you're playing his game. He met her gaze, searching. You said you'd fight for us, she continued. That means trusting me too. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Matteo nodded. Then we do this together. The headlights appeared just after midnight. One car, slow, confident. It stopped at the edge of the drive, engine idling, as if its owner had all the time in the world. Matteo stepped out onto the porch before anyone could stop him. Anna watched from the doorway, Nico stirring behind her, sensing the shift. The car door opened. Vittorio Hale emerged, smiling, hands empty, eyes bright with satisfaction. Still standing, he called. I'll give you that. Matteo did move. You wanted me, he said. Here I am. Vittorio, his gaze slid past him toward the house. I wanted the moment you realized power does to save you. Anna's hand tightened around the doorframe, and as Vittorio took one step forward, something in his smile shifted like a man, realizing the ending he written might not be the one he'd get. The night air was thick with river mist and the smell of wet earth. Vittorio took another step forward, slow, deliberate, his shoes crunching softly on gravel. He was older than Matteo remembered, his hair gone more silver than gray, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp for a man who claimed to have already won. You came out alone, Vittorio said. That surprises me. Matteo did answer. He stood still, hands visible, posture relaxed in a way that only men who had survived too many confrontations could manage. Calm ones to peace. Calm was preparation. You hurt my son, Matteo said quietly. You used pain like a language. Vittorio smiled. And you understood me perfectly. Inside the house, Anna held Nico against her chest, his small body warm and half awake. She watched through the glass, every muscle coiled tight. Matteo had told her to stay back. She agreed. That did, to mean she felt safe. Nico shifted, lifting his head. Mama is the sad man outside. Yes, she whispered. Is he angry? Yes. Nico frowned, thinking hard. Angry people don't listen. Anna swallowed. No, she said. They usually don't. Outside, Vittorio tilted his head, studying Matteo. You look different, he said, smaller. Matteo let out a slow breath. That is what happens when you stop hiding behind ghosts. A flicker of irritation crossed Vittorio's face. Don't pretend you've grown a conscience. This is still about control. No, Matteo said. This is about ending something that should have ended years ago. Vittorio laughed, sharp and humorless. You don't end men like me. You replace us. Matteo took a step forward. Just one. I'm not replacing you, he said. I'm stepping away. That gave Vittorio pause. What? He asked. I'm done, Matteo said. The territory, the name, the blood. It's yours if you want it. I won't contest you. Silence stretched thin as wire. Anna's breath caught. She hadn't known he would say it out loud. Not like this. Not here. Vittorio's eyes narrowed. You expect me to believe that? You know me, Matteo replied. When I lie, I negotiate. I'm not negotiating. Vittorio searched his face, looking for the trick, the blade hidden behind the words. And the woman, he asked softly. The child. Matteo's jaw tightened. They were never part of this world, but they were born into it, Vittorio countered. Because of you. Yes, Matteo said. And that's on me. A long moment passed. The river moved behind them, indifferent, endless. Vittorio sighed, almost bored. You always did think sacrifice makes you noble. He lifted his hand. Anna's heart slammed into her ribs. But no gun appeared, no signal. Vittorio simply rubbed his forehead, as if tired. "You disappear," he said slowly. "Publicly. No power plays, no retaliation. You leave the city within 48 hours. "And my family?" Matteo asked. Vittorio smiled thinly. "If you keep your word, they live quietly. I don't hunt ghosts." "And Lorenzo?" That smile faded. "The boy stays out of my way." Matteo nodded once. "He will." Inside, Anna felt something crack open in her chest, relief braided tightly with fear. This wasn't victory. It was a truce balanced on a blade. Vittorio turned back toward his car, then stopped. "One more thing," he said, without looking back. "If I ever hear your name again, I won't come with warnings." "I won't give you reason," Matteo said. The car door closed. The engine started. Headlights swept briefly across the house, across Anna's face, and the window before the car rolled away into the dark. Only when the sound was gone did Matteo's shoulders sag. Anna didn't wait. She rushed outside, Nico in her arms. "It's done?" she asked, her voice shaking. "For now," Matteo said. "That's all endings ever are." Nico looked at him sleepily. "Did the anger man go away?" "Yes," Matteo said, crouching again. "He did." Nico steadied him seriously. "Did you stop being angry too?" The question hit harder than any threat. Matteo opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded. "I'm trying." Nico seemed satisfied. He rested his head back on Anna's shoulder. Lorenzo arrived just before dawn. He looked terrible pale, furious, still hurting but alive. He took one look at Matteo and knew. "You gave it up," he said. Matteo didn't deny it. Lorenzo laughed once bare. "All that power for them?" Matteo met his gaze. "Yes." Lorenzo looked at Anna, at Nico, then back at his father. Something in his expression shifted, not approval, not forgiveness, but understanding. "Then don't waste it," Lorenzo said quietly. The sky began to lighten, the first thin line of gray cutting through the night. Anna watched Matteo stand there, stripped of the armor he'd worn his whole life, and realized this was the most dangerous moment of all. Because now, there was nothing left to hide behind. And as the sun rose over the river, she wondered whether love would be enough to build something new, or whether the past would still come calling, even after everything had been given away. The sunrise was muted, soft gray light spilling over the river like a tentative promise. Matteo stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, watching it, feeling a weight he hadn't acknowledged in years. The city behind him slept or fumed or applauded as it always did, but here, for the first time, there was a fragile stillness. Anna joined him quietly, Nico tugging at her hand. He was awake now, bright-eyed, alert, clutching a small blanket like a shield against the uncertainty that lingered even after Vittorio's departure. "You could have walked away entirely," Anna said softly. "You didn't have to stay for this." Matteo looked down at her, eyes tired but open, and gave the faintest of smiles. "I didn't want to leave them. Or you." Anna stiffened for a moment. Words like that were dangerous, liable to undo years of survival instincts. She let the silence stretch between them, letting the truth settle. He had changed, at least enough to care in ways that went beyond pride or control. Nico yawned and tugged her toward the house. "Mama, breakfast?" he asked. Simple, innocent, grounding. Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of toast and coffee. Matteo moved carefully, almost awkwardly, making sure Nico had what he liked, milk first, then cereal, spoon in hand, the small rituals of a life they could still protect. Anna watched, her heart lurching at the sight. He was good at business, at fear, at manipulation, but seeing him here, tentative, present, she realized he could also be gentle. "Do you do this often?" she asked, finally nodding at him. "Rarely," he admitted. "Usually someone else feeds him, while I make sure everyone else survives." Anna's lips twitched, almost a smile. She remembered the cold, calculating man who had ruled docks and deal with the same precision he now used to pour cereal into a bowl, and she realized, perhaps for the first time, that the heart inside him had always been buried, not gone, just hidden under layers of survival. The morning passed slowly. Conversations were minimal. punctuated by Nico's questions about everything: why the river looked silver, why the birds didn't sing as loud, why the sky hurt when it turned gray. Matteo answered them honestly, carefully, and Anna felt herself relaxing. Tension that had lived in her shoulders for years loosening little by little. By mid-afternoon, Matteo stepped outside again, alone this time. He walked down to the water's edge, boots crunching on gravel, hands clasped behind him. The river moved silently, indifferent to the choices of men. He considered the past, every decision, every compromise, every ruthless step he had taken to protect a life he now realized he almost ruined. Anna joined him again, Nico trailing behind, holding a small paper boat he had made. She stopped a few paces away, letting him breathe in the silence. "You think it's really over?" she asked. Matteo shook his head slightly. "Nothing ever truly ends. People hold grudges. Rivals wait. And we have to be careful." "But the screaming," she said softly. "Your son, the needles, it could have been worse." He looked at the river. "It could always be worse." She didn't argue. She just stood there watching him, seeing the man he had been and the man he might be. Nico lifted his little boat and set it on the water. The current carried it slowly away. "Goodbye," he said. "Go away, bad man." Matteo's lips twitched. He nodded. "Goodbye," he echoed quietly. The boat disappeared around the bend, and for a long moment, the three of them stood there together. Then Matteo turned to Anna. "We have a choice now," he said. "We can rebuild, or we can let everything we've survived wash away." She met his gaze. "I've spent too long running," she admitted. "I don't want to run anymore." "Then stay," he said simply. She nodded, and for the first time in years, she let herself believe it might be possible. Love, safety, a future that wasn't dictated by fear. Later that evening, Matteo and Anna sat on the porch. Nico was asleep inside, and the quiet hum of the city was distant now. They spoke little, letting gestures and glances carry meaning. Matteo reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. "You forgive me?" he asked finally, his voice low. Anna paused. Forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was a choice, a process. She looked at him, the man who had shaped her world, terrified and adored her, and said softly, "I'm trying." He nodded, a heavy weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time, power wasn't enough. Control wasn't enough. Love, that fragile, terrifying thing, was enough. The night wrapped around them, river wind carrying away the remnants of fear, and for the first time, Anna felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a decade: hope. Because the boy who screamed, the son who had been hidden, and the man who had ruled with iron were finally in the same place, together. Safe, if only for now. And as Matteo held her hand in the dark, she knew the next steps would be the hardest, but this night, this moment, was theirs. The dawn was quiet, too quiet. Matteo had slept only a few hours, but he was already awake, standing by the window, scanning the river and the roads beyond the property. Every instinct in him screamed vigilance, every muscle ready for the slightest threat. But the morning brought no gunfire, no engine, no shadows creeping closer. Only the soft glint of sunlight on water, calm and steady, as if the world itself wanted them to believe in peace. Anna joined him quietly, Nico trailing behind in his pajamas, clutching a small stuffed bear. The child yawned, rubbing his eyes, unaware of the weight pressing on the adults around him. "Do you think he'll come back?" Anna asked softly. Matteo shook his head. "Not after last night. Vittorio knows the cost is too high. He wants control, but he doesn't want more bodies on his hands. Not yours, not Nico's." Anna nodded, though unease lingered. She had lived a life shaped by threats and betrayal. Quiet didn't always mean safe. Lorenzo arrived shortly after breakfast. He looked more rested than the day before, but his eyes were sharp, alert, a boy hardened into a man by circumstance. He sat across from Matteo at the kitchen table, folding his hands in front of him. "You gave him everything," Lorenzo said, "and still he didn't leave you." Matteo studied his son carefully. "Sometimes the cost of control is higher than winning. You'll learn that one day." Lorenzo nodded, but the lesson didn't feel like victory. He pushed a cup of coffee toward his father. Then at least let the boys be boys. Let Anna and Nico have something normal for once. The words struck Matteo harder than any bullet ever could. He glanced at Anna, who offered a small, tentative smile. Her eyes said what her lips didn't. Thank you. Later, Anna found herself alone in the living room. Nico asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. She traced the outline of his face with her finger. Memories of nights spent hiding, running, and hoping flooding her mind. The fear was still there, muted but present, a reminder that the past never truly let go. Matteo joined her silently, standing at the doorway. He won't come back, he said quietly. She looked at him skeptical. How do you know? He shrugged. I don't. But I do know I'll be ready if he does, and I'll keep you both safe. Anna felt the weight of those words settle over her. She wanted to believe him, wanted to let herself feel safe. But safety had been a lie for so long that it felt fragile, almost imaginary. You've changed, she said finally, her voice soft. Not just for me, for him, for us. Matteo didn't answer immediately. He simply sat down beside her, eyes on Nico, and allowed himself a quiet moment of stillness he hadn't felt in years. The evening came, and Matteo insisted on taking a walk along the riverbank. He carried Nico in his arms, Anna walking beside them, hands brushing against his lightly. The river was calm, reflecting the orange-pink sky, as though it held the promise of something bare. You know, Matteo said quietly, I spent years thinking power was all I needed. That fear would keep people alive and loyal. I was wrong. Anna listened, waiting for the catch, the manipulation, the careful word meant to test her. None came. Love, he continued, is the only thing that's worth more than control. And it's the hardest thing I've ever fought for. Anna's eyes filled with tears she hadn't shed in years. She reached for his hand, letting her fingers weave through his. Then fight for it, Matteo. Fight for it with us. He looked at her, a faint smile breaking through the shadow of years spent running, controlling, and killing. I will. Every day, if I have to. Lorenzo appeared from behind a bend in the path, silent and observant. He watched the two of them, Nico nestled between them, and finally allowed himself a small nod. The family broken, fractured, but together was no longer defined by fear or absence. They were defined by presence, by choice, by love. And for a long moment none of them spoke. Only the river moved, carrying reflections of a past that had tried to destroy them, and a future they were finally allowed to hold. As night fell, Matteo, Anna, Lorenzo, and Nico returned to the house together. No one spoke of Vittorio, no one mentioned the needles or the screams. Those belonged to yesterday. Tonight, they were simply family. Tomorrow, the world could wait. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The morning sun filtered softly through the windows, golden and warm, washing the house in light. For the first time in years, Matteo woke without the weight of 1,000 threats pressing against his chest. He looked over at Anna, still asleep, Nico curled beside her like a tiny anchor, and felt something he hadn't dared feel in decades, peace. He didn't move immediately. He let the quiet settle over them, the kind of stillness that wasn't the absence of danger but the presence of trust. Slowly, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Anna's face. She stirred, smiled faintly, and muttered, "Morning." "Morning," he whispered back. Nico stirred as well, blinking sleep from his eyes. "Papa," he said, voice thick with sleep. Matteo looked at him and felt the full weight of what he had almost lost. "Yes, Nico, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Anna watched the exchange from the corner of her eye, her heart full, yet cautious. The scars of the past weren't erased, they never could be, but she saw something in Matteo now, a willingness, finally, to be more than the boy she had once loved, more than the Mafia boss who had ruled through fear. He had chosen them. Lorenzo appeared at the door, looking older, more grounded. "I think it's safe to say we survived the worst," he said quietly, "for now." Matteo allowed himself a small smile, looking at his son. "Not just survived, we've learned." The day unfolded slowly, unhurried. Breakfast together, laughter over spilled milk. Nico asking endless questions that Matteo answered with patience, and Anna finally allowing herself to laugh a sound, she hadn't heard from her own lips in far too long. The walls of the house, once a fortress against fear, now felt like a home. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Matteo and Anna found themselves on the porch again. Nico was building a small fort out of cushions, completely absorbed, while Lorenzo leaned against the railing, silent but at peace. Matteo took Anna's hand in his. "I can't promise the world will be quiet forever," he said softly, "but I can promise you this. I'll fight for us every single day, for as long as I live." Anna leaned into him, letting her head rest against his shoulder. "Then we'll fight together," she replied. "No running, no hiding, just us." They watched the river flow, the city stretching beyond it, alive and indifferent. And in that moment, Matteo realized that power and fear had never been enough. Not money, not control, not violence. What he had now, fragile and hard-won, was worth more than anything he had ever commanded: family love and the chance to be better. Nico called out suddenly, "Mama, Papa, look." They turned to see the little paper boat they had set on the river days ago, drifting gently downstream, unbroken. It was small, insignificant to anyone else but to them. It symbolized hope, survival, and the future they could now hold together. Lorenzo smiled faintly, a rare, honest expression. "Looks like we're finally free," he said. Matteo held Anna's hand tighter. "Free," he echoed, and as the sun finally set over the river, casting the house in golden light, they stood together, whole, wounded but unbroken. The screams, the needles, the fear, they belonged to the past. Ahead of them lay days of choice, of love, of quiet courage, because for the first time in a long time, they were truly home. If you felt this story touch your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are more stories waiting, and your support keeps them alive.